Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. If your income is inconsistent from month to month, maybe you're self-employed, maybe you're part of the gig economy, or maybe you're just navigating some career changes, saving for retirement can feel daunting. But here's the good news. You can absolutely build a strong, consistent retirement plan even with a variable income. Today, I'm going to show you how. We'll walk through the reality of income swings, the risks they create, and really a roadmap that can keep you on track no matter what life throws at you. Because your financial future doesn't just depend on a steady paycheck, it depends on having the right plan in place. The old idea of a steady climb up the career ladder, for a lot of people, that's more of a myth than reality today. And for many people, that's not even the goal anymore. More commonly, we're seeing careers that are kind of built around job changes, promotions, layoff, all supplemented with some freelance work. And all of this means that fewer people than ever are experiencing linear, predictable earnings. In fact, about 1/3 of American workers are now part of the gig economy. Globally, that number is around 435 million people, and it's grown by over 40% since 2016. Flexibility and freedom are big advantages here, but predictability, not so much. And the numbers tell the story. For gig workers, income volatility is 6 times higher than for traditional employees. Swings of roughly $850 a month versus $150. That's not just a minor bump in the road. That's a huge swing, especially if you're trying to budget, cover expenses, and build regular savings habits. When your income has such large potential swings, it can feel almost impossible to lock in a steady savings rate. And this is where a lot of people get tripped up. In the good months, they save aggressively. In lean months, they skip savings entirely. And that stop and start approach is dangerous because it cuts your compounding potential. And if you're not careful, what feels like a short-term pause could snowball into a long-term pause that ultimately creates a retirement gap. So how do these ups and downs in income actually ripple through your retirement plan? Let's break it down. When your income dips, the most obvious impact is simple. You've got less to save, but there's also a hidden trap. In those leaner months, a lot of people dip into their retirement funds. And yes, there are hardship provisions that allow you to take draws penalty-free. But remember, every dollar you pull out today is a dollar less that you have compounding for your future. Other people have an emergency fund that they can lean into. But if you're constantly drawing down your emergency fund, it leaves you less of a cushion for when life throws additional curveballs. Let's do the flip side of that. All of a sudden you experience an income jump. Maybe you get a promotion, a new job, maybe you have a big project. It's so easy to say, well, I've spent so many months living lean. Now is the time to treat myself and increase my lifestyle a bit. So where this could have been an opportunity to supercharge your savings, it gets lost in the shuffle of increasing your expenses. The research here is pretty striking. Job researchers actually reduce their savings rate by 0.7% on average, even though they're earning 10% more. That might sound tiny, but stretched out over an entire career, it can mean $300,000 less in retirement savings. And let's not forget inflation. Inflation is always operating in the background, reducing the purchasing power of our dollars. And that's why it's so important to put money in the market and get it growing at a rate that outpaces inflation for the long term. So how do you protect your future when your income doesn't always play by the rules? Well, you need to build a playbook. So let's get to work. When your income dips, the first rule is simple. Protect your essentials: housing, food, healthcare. But you don't want to abandon your retirement savings completely. Even if you scale back, it's ideal to keep something going into these funds. Just keep that habit going. If you have to, a pause is okay, but don't abandon the plan completely. This is where contribution flexibility comes into play. If you can't max out your IRA this month or make your contribution that gets you close to the max, that's fine. Scale back when necessary. When your income ramps up, well, then you start to make some catch-up contributions to get yourself back on track. And let's put this in perspective. Nearly 1/3 of gig workers say they couldn't make ends meet without their gig income. That level of fragility is what makes planning ahead for the lean months so important. And one of the best defenses you can have is to have an emergency fund. Traditional advice will tell you that you should have anywhere from 3 to 6 months worth of expenses sitting in a liquid account and at the ready. Now, if you have a variable income, you ideally want to be towards the higher end of that. Or maybe you want an emergency fund that's even larger. Maybe you go towards 9 months or even a year's worth of expenses sitting ready. This is the buffer that keeps you from raiding your investment accounts when things get tight. Remember, that emergency fund is your first line of defense. You only want to touch your investments if it's an absolute last resort. Now let's talk about savings targets. Traditional advice will tell you you should have a set percentage of your income going towards investments or savings. And this can be really key when it comes to a variable income, because if you otherwise set a specific dollar target, say you set a target of $500 towards investments every single month, some months that might not be realistic if you experience a major swing in income. And if you can't hit that target, that can leave you feeling like you failed. But if you set your goal as a percentage, say 15%, it automatically flexes with your income. If you earn $8,000 one month, 15% means $1,200 goes towards savings. In the next month, you earn, say, $5,000. That's $750 still going towards savings. And if you have a really lean month, say you only earn $2,500, 15% would still be $375 to investments. In every case, you're still saving, and that is what truly matters. Don't aim for perfection. Life is messy. Maybe you have a child. Maybe you buy a home. Maybe you're going through a career transition. All of these events, or any of them, could force you to temporarily reduce your savings rate. That doesn't mean you failed. This is just part of the journey. The goal isn't to never stumble, but it's to always find your way back to saving and investing for your future. Now let's walk through a simple but really powerful example. We're going to look at a typical wage earner, someone who spends an entire 35-year career cycling between incomes of $50,000, $60,000, and $70,000. When they save, they're saving 15% of their income, but in some cases, they take breaks, 5 years off or even 10 years off, with no contributions at all. And in those pause years, and this is very important, they leave that money invested. They let compounding continue to do the heavy lifting in the long term. And this is what's surprising. In every single one of the situations, we still end up with a portfolio of over $1 million. That's really incredible. In this first scenario, let's say they save consistently for 15 years, then take a 5-year break in the middle of their career from contributing anything to investments, and then they get back on track on the final 15 years. They put in $270,000 total, and they ended up with nearly $1.4 million in investments. That means over $1 million of their balance came from compounding, not from their own contributions. I think seeing scenarios like that is incredibly eye-opening, because what we have here is someone who's a very typical wage earner with a very typical savings rate and a very real-life scenario where they may have had to stop saving for a period of time, in this case 5 years, but they still reached retirement age with a very impressive portfolio. Let's compare that to the baseline. Let's say they never took a break from savings. Their income still cycled, but they saved for 35 straight years. They contributed about $43,000 more than in our first example. Their final balance at retirement is a little over $1.5 million. The steady savings gave them an additional $150,000 over that 5-year pause scenario. But notice, most of the extra growth wasn't from those extra contributions. It was from the compounding building on itself. So if you don't take a break, you end up with a higher balance. That's pretty common sense, but look at these two balances. They're not all that different from each other. So now let's try to take a longer break. Let's take 10 years of no saving whatsoever right in the middle of a career. So here our investor does 10 years of savings, Then they do a complete 10-year pause where they don't contribute anything to investments. And then for the final 15 years of their career, they go back to investing. So they still save for 25 years total. And this time they've contributed a little bit over $223,000. And at the end of the 35 years, they walk away with a little bit over $1.1 million in investments. So yes, this 10-year pause does cost them over $400,000 of what they would otherwise have had in their portfolio if they had steadily invested throughout the course of their entire career, but they still broke 7 figures, and I think that's pretty impressive. Key takeaways here: time beats perfection. Even in situations with 5 or even 10 years of no contributions whatsoever, starting early and staying invested allowed our investor to break 7 figures. Mid-career gaps are very realistic. People often hit higher expenses in their 30s or their 40s. Maybe it's because of kids, maybe it's because of your house, maybe it's because of caregiving responsibilities. Having a break mid-career where you have to pause savings and investments could be very realistic, but this just shows if you get started early, you take that pause, and then resume saving later, you can still come out ahead. Early money grows the most. If the gap in savings had been at the start, the ending balance would have been much smaller. And if the gap in savings had been at the end of the career, the ending balance would have been much larger. And why is that? Because those early dollars invested are the most powerful. They are the ones that get the most time to compound. Compounding is what does the heavy lifting. In every single scenario, the growth outpaced the contributions. Even in our weakest scenario, where we took a 10-year break from savings and our investor contributed a little bit over $223,000, their total contributions, their portfolio grew to over $1.1 million. Now, I know it can be stressful. If you're in a season of life where your expenses have crept up and you've had to pause your investments or you've had to scale them back, it can feel like you're falling further and further behind. But what these examples clearly show is that a pause or a break will not make or break your retirement. Yes, it's true to save as often and as aggressively as you can to set your future self up for success. But know this, having to take a limited break is not setting yourself up for failure. You're still in the game if you leave your money invested, and you're still in the game if you come back and start contributing again. Leave your money invested and let compounding do the work. The goal is never about perfection. The goal is about progress. Let's take a moment to talk about one of the biggest pitfalls that happens during job changes, and it's more common than you might think. As of 2025, there are about 29 million forgotten 401k accounts, holding roughly $1.7 trillion in assets. That is not pocket change. That is real money scattered across old jobs. And here's the kicker. Even when people move into a new job, about 18% of eligible employees don't enroll at all. That means they're often walking away from free money in the form of an employer match. And it gets worse. Over half of all job switchers, about 55%, end up with significantly less in their retirement savings because they never reset their contribution rate. Remember that $300,000 gap I mentioned at the start of the video? This is how it happens. So, anytime you change a job, do 2 things right away. Number 1, track down and consolidate those old accounts. Number 2, enroll in your new plan immediately and make sure your contribution rate is at least what it was before, if not higher. Those 2 simple steps can save you from leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. So maybe you landed a new job, you got a big raise, or you took on more work. What do you do when your income goes up? These are really exciting moments, but dangerous if you allow lifestyle inflation to take over the entire increase in your income. So your first move before you do anything with your lifestyle is to increase and lock in a higher savings rate. Funnel a portion of that raise straight into retirement. If you were saving 15% before, maybe bump it up to 17% or 20%. The key is to make sure your future self is capturing some of this income gain, not just your present self today. And if this income bump came from switching to a new job, make sure you enroll in that new employer's plan right away. Now let's talk tax strategy. If you have a gap in income or you temporarily find yourself in a lower tax bracket, now might be a golden opportunity to do a Roth conversion at a discount. Anytime in your career where you experience a dip in income, if you have funds that are sitting in a traditional account, this can be a great opportunity to get it switched over to a Roth account where it can grow completely tax-free. And finally, build resilience. One of the best ways to protect yourself from a fluctuating income is to build multiple streams of income. That might mean a side hustle that brings in, say, an extra $1,000 a month, or a skill that you can lean on when your main income takes a hit. For example, let's say you step away from your career to pursue something new. Your side hustle can serve as a cushion, reducing the amount that you would otherwise need to take from your savings. The more income streams you have, the less pressure you put on any one income source. And truly, the more control you have over your financial journey. So here's the big picture. Your income doesn't have to be perfectly steady in order for you to have a strong retirement. Whether you're navigating career changes, a job shift, part of the gig economy, or self-employed, you can build steadiness into your financial life. I know it can feel stressful if it feels like you're not saving as much as you would like, or if life is forcing you to hit the pause button. But one of the best things you can do to still come out ahead is to make sure you don't touch your savings. Let compounding do its work. If you are forced to take a pause and not contribute to your investments, leave them alone and you can come back to them. Once you come back, continue contributing, you might find that by the time you get to retirement, you have a stronger portfolio than you ever thought you would. At the end of the day, your financial future doesn't depend on you having a flawless income stream throughout the course of your entire career. What it depends on is you having a plan and sticking to it. Like I said earlier in the video, and one of my favorite sayings in life is to not aim for perfection, but to aim for progress. So I would love to hear from you guys. If you have experienced career gaps, or you've had to reduce or pause your savings or your investment contributions throughout your career, could you share what your story's been in the comments down below? I really do feel like this could help other viewers who might be in that situation and a bit stressed about it. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. I always joke one day, I'm going to be a YouTuber, and I'll be like, well, you can't be that because that's how I paid for our entire life. 435 million people are now why am I not talking right today? American workers are now, oh my goodness. We got this. When I've got to go list my dog for sale. I'll be back. Lifestyle creeps comes into play. I don't know what is going on. Because if you set I said cuz. I hate when I say cuz instead of because. I try to be more intentional with words.